Hey, folks, welcome back. We're joined once again by leader of Action SA in Parliament, Athol Trollop, who is leading that delegation and was involved in this budget. I don't know what to call this sort of thing. That's why I've asked him to come on. So before you respond, Athol, a lot of us are confused because the news reporting has been very bizarre, claiming that Action SA came with a budget proposal to the ANC that didn't call for a VAT increase. Then we were told it did include a VAT increase. And if it did include a VAT increase, we're trying to figure out how it was different from what the DA was doing, other than apparently they wanted expropriation without compensation rescinded. So we're all kind of confused about that. I know a lot of people are very confused. Some people are very upset. And I don't know that they all have a right to be upset. So if you could explain to us what kind of unfolded, and if we have time, we'll talk about the clown car show that was that parliamentary session the other day. But right now, can you explain to us what exactly is going on? Because the difference in this budget approval were your votes. Your 6 votes made the difference. 192 to 184, you take 6 Action SA votes away, and the thing fails. So tell us about it and let us know what happened, please.
Yeah, Chris, not quite like that. 194 votes for, 182 against. So it's a bit more than 6 votes. But be that as it may, the fiscal framework is derived after the Minister of Finance tables his budget. The whole dilemma that we have with our budget in South Africa is that the budget was supposed to have been tabled on the 19th of February. It was aborted minutes before because the minister informed the GNU, Government of National Unity Cabinet, that he was proposing a 2% percentage point hike in VAT. Now, that obviously received round and sound rejection from everybody. And I said at the time that the government is mad and they must cut fat and leave the VAT. We have a notoriously bad government at wasting expenditure, wasting money. Corruption is the most corrosive thing in any budget. And there's just too much of that in South Africa. So 21 days later, on the 12th of March, the minister tabled another budget. And he managed to shave off 1.5 percentage points from that original proposal of a 2 percentage point increase, which shows that it can be done. And even that received rejection from a number of political parties. In fact, I think almost unanimous rejection, but certainly from the ANC's GNU partners, the DA and the Freedom Front Plus, and ourselves. So we again objected to the budget. And within a certain number of hours, it had to go, or 16 days, it had to go to the Standing Committee on Finance. And there are 11 members on that committee. And it's an odd number for very good reason, so you don't have a stalemate. And what happens in that committee, you either accept the fiscal framework, which is a policy statement, not the budget. It's a policy statement on how the government will spend its money and what its spending priorities are. And in that committee, if you make an amendment and everyone agrees to an amendment or rejects the fiscal framework, the minister has to start the process de novo. Got to go through the whole budget process again. But there's some ironic piece of legislation in South Africa that if the minister tables a budget with a tax increase, it kicks in within a certain number of days. And in this case, it's the 1st of May. On the 1st of May, VAT will increase by 0.5%. And his budget says in the following year, there'll be another 0.5% increase. So we have a situation where if the budget or the fiscal framework is rejected at the Finance Committee or amended, the minister must start the process all over, which means that that would not be complete by the time you reach the deadline of the 1st of May. So what we did was we said to them, we're not going to amend this budget, but we'll accept the fiscal framework on condition that you go back and you find additional revenue in this budget and cut expenditure to avoid a VAT increase and personal income tax bracket creep. The reason we did that is that we believe that the minister has the authority to come with amended legislation or even a gazette to say that we are not going to increase this VAT. And there's a perfectly good example that I'm going to use right now. On the day of the matter being taken then after the Finance Committee on Monday, it went to Parliament on the Tuesday, let me just get it right, on Wednesday. The Finance Committee met on Tuesday. It went to Parliament on Wednesday. And there again, the parties debated and voted. And again, the whole of Parliament, not just one casting vote in the Standing Committee, which we did have, voted for the fiscal framework. Now, what that means is that on that day, I beg your pardon, the South African Revenue Services tabled a report that they'd collected 8.8 billion rand more than they anticipated. They collected a record 1.855 trillion rand. They're the biggest revenue generator, obviously, and it was 114 billion rand more than the year before. So immediately we said, there's a perfect example. There's 8.8 billion more than you thought you had. You've now got that, and the shortfall was 28 billion. So now you're only looking for 20 billion in a 2 trillion rand budget is around 1%. So we said, you shaved off 1.5% in 21 days. You've now got 30 days to shave off that 0.5%. And we are tabling tomorrow recommendations to the minister. And I know other stakeholders and other political parties are doing the same thing. And we believe that the ANC understands, Chris, here's the big point. The ANC understands that if they double cross the parties that they convinced to vote for this fiscal framework, that's one thing. And, you might get double-crossed once. Double-crossed twice, you really are being a bit foolish. But the ANC realize that if they don't fulfill their obligations and their undertakings, they're going to be double-crossing South Africans. And they've done that all too often in the past. And many people say, well, how do you trust these guys? Well, there is a massive trust deficit with the ANC. But sometimes, people come to their senses. I think the ANC have now come to their senses and finally realized that they don't govern unilaterally anymore. They don't have a majority. I think with the GNU statement of intent that they signed, it wasn't even a proper coalition agreement. I can't believe they went into it with a ridiculous statement of intent. They've now realized that they need to take people along, and they're now starting to understand that running a GNU of 70% and having partners in there that are just diametrically opposed to what they're trying to do is impossible. So that's where we are, Chris.
Well, Athol, thank you for that detailed explanation. I hope we could all keep up with where it was going there. I think I understand. But there's a couple things that come out on this. Number one, you're an optimist, brother. I'll give you that. I don't see the ANC recognizing that they are part of a coalition. In fact, the comments coming from ANC leaders about they're going to kick the DA out of the coalition is a joke. It's not their coalition. It was the DA and ANC who formed the agreement. So neither one of them can kick the other one out. That's just ridiculous. But they're acting as if they're in charge. So, but you're on the inside. You see it every day. You have a much better feel for what's going on the ground than we do from the outside observing. But I'm not convinced. And not to get off topic, but just to mention briefly, Ronnie Lamola's response today about legislation being put in place by Ronnie Jackson, a representative from Texas, about the same bill that was put in Congress last year, except instead of 6 pages of grievances from South Africa, it's 15 pages now, and they're calling for sanctions on ANC leaders. And his response is to call it propaganda and misinformation. I don't think they're getting it, at least not in the international perspective. But back to the budget. So is this a gentleman's agreement that you have with the ANC that they will find this money, or is it something on paper? So that's the first question. And the second question here related to that is, I'm not making this claim, but given if they do this again, if they don't inform the people who helped them get the budget passed and they don't meet the agreement that they've come up with, whether it's gentlemen's or on paper, is there a possibility of a no confidence vote for Cyril Ramaphosa in the near future here? There's a lot of parties now that are not happy. Any thoughts?
Yeah, look, first of all, it started off as a gentleman's agreement because the ANC came to speak to us. They obviously spoke to other political parties that were outside of the GNU and obviously parties inside of the GNU. 2 of them didn't vote for the fiscal framework. It was the DA and the Freedom Front Plus. And when the ANC spoke to us, we came up with this proposal. We said we've got a long shopping list of important items that we think need the attention. But here's the most important thing. We need to quit this uncertainty. We need to put it to bed. We've seen what's happened to the value of the rand, declining steadily over the last 42 days. It declined dramatically after the United States implemented the unilateral tariffs, and that's got nothing to do with how Action SA voted in the Fiscal Framework Committee. But we've seen the rand tank significantly after that because there are obviously dramatic consequences. But Chris, here's the very ironic part that you probably don't know. The ANC was contacting everybody in Parliament, all the parties, because they couldn't come to an agreement with the DA. I think the DA overplayed its hand. You mentioned it. They were wanting expropriation without compensation matters adjusted, and BELA matters adjusted, and authority over the rail lines in the city of Cape Town. And they wanted more control over the finances of the country. And they simply, I think, overplayed their hand and got knocked back. Now, when you play poker, you can play poker any way you like. But you're trying to win the hand, and sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. Sometimes the banker just looks at you and takes your money. And I think that's what's happened here. But here's the other part. Chris, the ANC approached us, and they approached all the other parties that voted for them. The DA only spoke to the ANC. They didn't speak to any of the other GNU partners. I have that on authority from the IFP, from Rise Mzansi. They didn't deign it necessary. We reached out to the DA in the standing committee. We said, can we meet with you last Friday? They rebuffed it. So to me, I'm telling you what my gut feeling is. My gut feeling is that the DA played their hand really hard, lost the deal, and have decided that they're going to tank this. And, they're fully entitled to do that. They can tank the government, but that is a very dangerous game to play. Because what we're faced with now is a possibility of this budget being extended, and you can spend up to 45% of the budget if it hasn't been passed in the new financial year, but you can only spend it on fixed costs and salaries. No operational government. So service delivery is going to battle, and our country is in desperate need of improved service delivery. So it appears that there's a deadlock, way more than a deadlock, between the ANC and the DA. They are diametrically opposed anyway. And I want to tell you that there was this unbelievable superiority attitude of the DA that has really driven people away from them. And we've been witnessing, it's been quite amazing. Imagine not even speaking to any of the people, and even in the finance committee, there were 11 members of parliament who sit in the finance committee. We phoned the DA member and sent them a message and said, "Can we meet and talk with you?" He said no, he was too busy. He had other priorities. So he basically blue ticked us. I wrote a message to John Hlophe of the MKP, and he also blue ticked me. He got the message, read it, and didn't come back to me. But we spoke to a number of other political parties, and obviously the ANC spoke to us. We aren't big friends of the ANC's, Chris, but you know what? We are South Africans, and South Africans have shown that when we work together, we are at our very best, and when we work against each other, we're at our very worst. And we don't want to be at our worst. We want to be at our best. So I believe that between now and the 1st of May, we will come up with a solution, and all the people that have been maligning us and calling us all sorts of names and sellouts, I think they'll regret that. And then lastly, isn't it ironic that the DA is allowed to work with the ANC, but if any other party works with the ANC, the DA calls them sellouts?
Yeah, that is ironic. And I think I agree with your assessment. The DA overplayed their hands. They went for too much. But quite frankly, the DA, from my perspective, has never really realized the power they held when the ANC needed a coalition partner last year. They didn't get anything of substance. They got agriculture, they got home affairs, things that are broken, things that if they get fixed, the ANC will take credit for. It was our government. They didn't get none of the security cluster. They didn't get finance. They didn't get foreign affairs. And so that just showed me how weak the negotiation was, because the ANC needed the DA. The DA didn't need the ANC last year. Once they entered in, the ANC for months acted as if they were still a 50+1 party, making all decisions from Lutuli House. This is the outside view. So I agree with you on that one there. We're going to wrap up here shortly. But
can I
sure.
say one thing about that? Chris, you hit the nail on the head, but there's some more to that than simply not getting, decent portfolios and decent ministries. I think some of the ANC DA ministers have made a pretty good fist of it. But their biggest weakness in this arrangement with the ANC was that they signed a statement of intent. They did not sign a coalition agreement. And a coalition agreement is a completely different thing. It, if they had a proper coalition agreement, they wouldn't have this deadlock with the budget because there would have been a deadlock breaking mechanism in there. And I find that really curious because the DA has probably the most experience of coalitions. They're very new in South Africa. The ANC is not very good at coalitions because they've been a hegemonic government for 30 years. But the DA is probably the most experienced party in South Africa when it comes to coalitions. But they made rank rookie errors in this agreement. It's a statement of intent, very wishy-washy document. It's almost as if they rushed in there with too much enthusiasm. So that's the point there. And I just think that any coalition agreement with a government that has been a hegemonic government has got really bad habits. It's got to be written in blood, and people need to understand that where there will be deadlocks, these are how you're going to sort them out. Because here's the thing, Chris, they've been in government together with the ANC for 9 months. There's been no policy change. They've had a policy lechotla. Nothing came out of that. Nothing's changed. So they've been meandering along with ANC policies and ANC behavioral patterns with no difference to be seen. So we can't create jobs, we can't grow the economy. So the DA really has been, as I said yesterday, a bit like a eunuch in a brothel. They have all the intention with no ability to do anything about it in this agreement.
Well, I can't disagree with you on that. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know what the DA was thinking here. It's almost like they were ecstatic that, hey, we have our hands on power now. And so, but you're right. And people are frustrated and angry at the DA. But I want to get to you in just a moment here and give you a chance to give you the final thoughts here, because a lot of people are angry at Action SA. Based on this conversation, maybe they shouldn't be angry at Action SA. I will give you a chance to talk about that. But before I do, the thing is that, it's very frustrating because the legacy media, the mainstream media, aren't sharing this conversation, the things you're sharing right now. It's not really coming out that way in the press. And so your party's being rubbished. I'm not here to defend Action SA. I'm also not here to attack you. And the same with the DA, although they're easy to attack these days. But listen, Athol, you are a very experienced parliamentarian. You led the DA in Parliament back in the day. And so you're there. You kindly went into retirement, and then they drug you back kicking and screaming into government. And here you are leading a contingent of Action SA in Parliament, trying to make things work for South Africans. But I will say one thing before you answer this. I give you the last comment on the floor here, and that is that you're going to need to work together. South Africans, really. I mean, this has been a horrible day for South Africa. What's it? Something like South Africa, Aglika Dag, something like that. A horrible day. Today's been a horrible day for South Africa because you've got the 30% tariffs have been applied by Trump. Then on top of that, you've got Troy Nels putting in another piece of legislation in, giving white Afrikaners, refugee status. This is outside of what Trump is doing. So that's in the House now. We've got a proposal from Ronnie Jackson to sanction ANC leaders and punish South Africa. On top of that, the rand is being slaughtered now, as we see in the markets today. And then the Johannesburg Stock Exchange was obliterated yesterday. Trillion rand value evaporated. That could come back. And then finally, this allegation coming from some British NGO that the ANC was aware of the October 7th, 2023. I have no evidence of this. This is just, it's all over the place right now. But whether it's true or not, this is a bad day for South Africa. At least for the ANC, it's a bad day. So South Africans are going to have to work together. So Athol, you can address that if you want, but I really just want to get your thoughts for sure about why people should not be angry at Action SA and why you believe you did the right thing. I think that's fair to give you a chance to say that. All right?
Okay, well, first of all, look, it has been a really bad week for South Africa. And, sometimes when you're against the ropes, you bounce back and you realize you have to start addressing some of the seminal issues that I think the ANC in particular, but also the GNU have simply just been shrugging off. You can't shrug off global movements, geopolitical movements. I mean, Chris, in 1990, across the world, Germany, Taiwan, you name it, it was a decade of unbelievable uncertainty and change. And I think now in the mid-20s, we're going to be going through the same kind of massive changes. Political shifts are happening right across the globe, and you've got to be on top of it. We're even more of a global village now than we were in the 90s. So you've got to be awake and aware to that. To your second question, people being angry with us, when the second biggest party in South Africa has had sole preserve of the opposition, and they move into government and other parties come along, small parties, and they start maneuvering in their space, they get really irritated with that. So we've seen the DA propaganda machine and all their bots coming out in unbelievable vitriol against Action SA. But I can go and put my head on my pillow this evening knowing that we have a problem, we have an impasse, and there are two options when you have that. You either do something and try something pragmatic to fix the problem, or you moan and groan about it and do nothing about it. And we're not going to do that. Action SA has taken a decision. We came up with a recommendation. We are totally opposed to that. So if the 1st of May comes along and the ANC says to us, sorry, guys, we can't find the money, VAT's going to be increased, well, we would have been done. And that we'll have to take that on the chin. It's going to be a really bitter pill for us as a young political party. But if we can fix this problem and come 1st of May, VAT does not increase, all those people that have been saying nasty things about us and that we're stupid and we don't know what we're doing and can't trust the ANC, they're going to have to rethink themselves. I wrote a letter to somebody today who was threatening me with all sorts of things. I said to him, that's fine, you can say whatever you like, but I'm trying and I'm going to continue trying until the 1st of May. And if that doesn't kick in, I'm looking forward to your letter after that day.
Athol, thanks a lot for that. Appreciate that. So, yeah, no, look, I know where you're coming at. I've been reporting on the news in South Africa, the events going on, and I've already had threats to my life just for reporting objective of the news. It's insane, the behavior of people. It really is shocking. You're just trying to do the best you can for South Africans, and I'm just trying to do the best reporting things objectively on all sides.
Chris, I want to just say, I think you do a great job. I think you know a lot about South Africa. I've said that to you before. I know that you've been getting some flack and been called all sorts of names, right wing and all the rest. I know you're not that, but I just do know that if you are perpetually getting kicked out of relationships or coalitions, the same party every time, then you need to start looking at it. The DA has got a really bad track record in coalition agreements and relationships. We've seen it happening in Johannesburg, in Ekurhuleni, in Tshwane. You were there during the multi-party charter. You were there when the multi-party charter fell apart. The DA are just too superior to work with anybody else, and they've got a really poor track record in coalition, except when they are very strong in the coalition. Then they dominate the coalition. But where they have to share, they're not good at doing that.
Well, I guess the example would be there, the city of Cape Town, where they are strong and they do what they want, and everyone has to ride along with them. But that's not a real coalition. But I mean, that's the leader of the pack, and everyone else goes along for the ride, and they don't have influence. But Athol Trollip, thank you so much for your comments and also explaining what's going on with Action SA here. And people can decide for themselves whether they want to support Action SA or whoever they want to support. But at least you've heard it here, and you've heard it honestly. It's the weekend. It's Nye week, so enjoy your weekend. Be safe out there. And rugby's coming up, so we got the Lions today, the Bulls tomorrow, and the Sharks on Sunday. And let's hope the South African sides win, because my Stormers are not in the Challenge Cup or Champion Cup. It's over.
Well, you see, you do know a lot about South Africa.
Yeah. All right. That's it, folks. Athol Trollip from Action SA.
Thank you, Chris.